SHUEN art is known for that sketchy, painterly style that so many people love, the beautiful and complex eyes, and the well-drawn atmosphere and use of composition. I know a lot of you are wondering how you can draw like this too, so that's why I spent hours and hours of time and research to bring you this style study. And like before, I'll be going pretty in-depth on the eyes, since they're probably the hardest to break down. So this study has been broken down into two parts, and for part 1, this video, we're covering eyes, nose, mouth, and other features. Here are the timestamps for those, if you want to skip ahead to a certain part. And for the first part of this video, let's discuss the drawing process of SHUEN art. She starts out with a really rough sketch that is simply trying to get the composition down, then does a couple cleanup sketches, adding all the details of the character in, as well as the background. Next, she separates the different subjects with different colors. The character, major objects, and the background should all be separately filled in with different colors. Then, I believe she makes a new layer over each of those sections and clips it to these section layers. Then, she fills in the base colors. An example would be, for the character, this is when you would add the base colors for the skin, hair, clothing, and other areas. And then, from my observations, she adds the shading and then paints over things to finish it, but I'll focus on the rendering and finishing touches parts in part 2 of this style study. So for now, it's time to go over mouths. She seems to draw all of her mouths resembling this shape here. It's like a parallelogram shape, and then she draws a soft bottom lip. The area of the lip closer to the actual mouth is more pinkish than the rest of the lip. She also uses a light off-white color and makes 2 to 3 strokes across the lip, always with one stroke longer than the others. Also, this obviously isn't the way she draws every single mouth. This is just the way I've seen her draw most of them. And next is noses. The nose is typically just a line and then a rounded shape above that line. It's either to the side of the line or directly above, as you can see in these 2 examples. Also note that usually that rounded shape is lighter and more yellow-toned than the base skin color. Now for the most complex part, the eyes. In one of SHUEN art's videos, she says that the eye is made of 3 parts, the eyeball, the upper lid, and the lower eyelid. Now here are some tips that she uses for the eye and the area around it. The eyelash highlights depend on the light source, so if the light is coming from below the eye, the highlights will look like this. However, if it's coming from above, it can also look like this. The exact placement can change depending on the angle of the eye, but that's pretty much how it is for most eyes. The shadows the eyelashes cast follow the same rule. Depending on where the light source is, it could be placed differently. And for the blush, SHUEN art mentions that if you're going for a more mature look, make the blush closer to the outer corner of the eye like this. But for a softer look, place it closer to directly underneath the lower eyelid, like this. Now I did many studies of various different eyes in SHUEN's illustrations, and the result of that is this broken down analysis of the eye. I cannot guarantee that this is the exact order in which the artist does this, and it's not the way she draws it 100% of the time either, but here it is anyway. Let's start by drawing the upper eyelid to look something like this. As you can see, the edge of the eyelashes here is a flat line, and that's going to be important for a future step. Now, a few eyelashes are drawn in. You can make those shapes by just making a long stroke with your finger or stylus pen. Like 𝙲𝚞𝚛𝚎𝚗𝚝 eyelash style, they're drawn in with a darker and more saturated color to emphasize them and make them look like they stick out more. And the part of the eyelash that is closer to the eyeball is lighter than the rest of the eyelash. Next, for the lower eyelash, mimic the shape of the upper eyelash edge here with a flat line, and make sure it looks like this. There's also a swooping line that connects with that part here, and then draw a few small thinner eyelashes along that line. It thins out with a disconnected eyelash stroke here. Then, with a lighter blue-gray color, fill in the eyeball. The lashes will cast a shadow on the eyeball, so make zigzag lines that look like the eyelashes with a darker color. The edge of that shadow is also more saturated and brighter colored. Next, I lined the edges of the eyelids closest to the eyeball with an even lighter color that looks close to this base color of the iris that we're going to fill in soon. Now fill in the iris. For this eye, the base color was an orange. Then, the lower half of the iris can be a lighter color. Yellow-orange was used in the example here. Also, when you're painting this, it looks better slightly messy, as you can see. And then a circle with a smaller circle attached to it on the side here is in the place of the pupil. That circle is filled in with a lighter brown color. And then there's an accent color that's on the same side of the color wheel as the original base color. There can be a slight variation in the hue and brightness of the color as well. Then, for this eye, there are a bunch of other colors added. I don't know if that's how it is for all the eyes she draws, but you can maybe swap out the wide range of colors for a slight variation of the base color if you want. Then, with a brown color, trace that outside part of the iris. It's somewhat thick, but not too thick. I use the smudge brush to blend out that line a little. And then there's this blended-in effect on the edge of the eye. I don't know how SHUEN creates it, but I managed to achieve this look by color picking the color of the eyeball and just making small, thin strokes with that color here. And then on top of everything else, make bright white highlights. A smaller circle that starts kind of at the corner of the pupil, and then some strokes here as well. The light source here is somewhere above the eye, so the highlights will be onto the top side of the eyelashes. You can also make some horizontal strokes across the eyelid to make it look extra shiny. Then both eyelids are defined with these darker, more saturated versions of the skin color that are above the top of the eye and below the bottom of the eye, so here and here. And then the crease at the top here is added, as well as some highlights to the skin. There's some on the top part of here, and then a squiggly line on the cheek here. And then the eye is blended in with the skin over here. Next, the blush for this eye is closer to the corner of the eye, as you can see. But if you're going for a softer look, the majority of it would be here instead. And once you've done that, there are just some crease lines here and there, and then further blending out of the eyelash area here. Just try your best to copy how it looks in the example. In part 2, we'll be showing you my observations of SHUEN's finishing touches, effects, and lighting and rendering. That video will be published exactly 1 week from the day that I'm posting this video. And once it's out, I'll put it up here at the top right of the screen.